So yeah, Shayne, this anti-vet bill ties directly into today's episode. And what happens essentially is the man who made this bill, Senator and presidential hopeful Cornelius Fremont, is delivering a speech when he comes under fire from an assassination attempt.
You know, you feel for the guys. Because it's like they're radicalized because of this injustice to not only them, but to their friends who they literally, bled for the country they bled for. And you have this, this politician going like, yeah, fuck you. So yeah, you kind of feel for them.
I think this is one of the most notorious levels for, you open the door to go into the laundry room and you hear that dreaded kaping go off. Yeah.
It gives me nightmares, man.
How's it going, everyone? I'm Isaac, and this is Shayne.
Hello, hello.
And welcome back to Down the Rabbit Hole, the series where we go level by level in Ready or Not, breaking down all of the little narrative details and subplots that you might easily miss. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about Ides of March. Now, if you can't quite remember what we talked about last episode, that's okay, because we have a Shayne here.
Yeah.
And what he does is recap us on everything that's happened so far. So Shayne, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. My mind is indeed a steel trap and I forget nothing. So last week we talked about the 4U gas station, and to basically summarize what happened, we had a incident that started off pretty, by the books, but the more we delved into it, it seemed like there may have been some ulterior motives. So we had Andre Williams, Jaden Fletcher, and Zion Pretlow, along with a unknown fourth individual, rob the 4U gas station. And during the robbery, things went bad and a couple people got killed. However, the mystery there goes even further because it appears as though there may have been an inside job. But regardless, all that aside the point, we learned about a few interesting things about that map. First and foremost, a veteran, or we can call him a good Samaritan, tried to stop the shootings, but ended up getting shot himself when his gun jammed. Now, when we look at that veteran, it might seem as though, he doesn't have a deeper connection to the story. However, if we look at his sign, he is protesting against an anti-veteran bill, and that anti-veteran bill is the main subject of today's episode.
So yeah, Shayne, this anti-vet bill ties directly into today's episode. And what happens essentially is the man who made this bill or proposed this bill, I'm not exactly sure how that worked, Senator and presidential hopeful Cornelius Fremont, is delivering a speech on the day of this bill sort of being enacted when he comes under fire from an assassination attempt. Now, as I mentioned, Fremont heavily supports this anti-vet bill, and he's drawn a lot of hate from the veterans who rely on their government benefits.
So while Senator Fremont was in the middle of his speech, shots rang out from the 12th floor of the luxury apartments known as Barisa Cove. Now, Senator Fremont is still alive. He's in critical condition, but this was an orchestrated attack by a group known as the Left Behind.
Now, the Left Behind has been designated as a domestic terrorist organization by the LSPD. And as you could probably guess, all of these men are former combat veterans, people that the senator's bill directly attacks. Now, once we make our way into the building and as we work throughout the level, you'll see that these men are really kitted out. They've got tons of big gear and guns that we're not really used to seeing in Ready or Not. But before we make our entry into the building, having to dodge traps and all sorts of crazy stuff, we thought it'd be cool if we talked about our own personal experiences with the map.
So when I first did this map, I will say I struggled so much, especially with those tripwires that are everywhere. Or actually, I wouldn't say everywhere. They are in the worst spots. It's always where you least expect them. For instance, when I played this map one time, it was within the first door. And not only that, depending on where you choose to begin this mission, whether it's going up from the stairwell or the other stairwell by the elevators, it's really unique that it puts you kind of right in the middle.
Right.
In terms of layout. There's not a lot of places to hide or like take cover, which, you know, makes sense because that's how like an apartment complex would probably be like. You know, I don't think there's like barriers to hide behind if you're like, you know, in a luxury apartment complex. Yeah. And because of that, it was just like, it took me so long just to get out of the front door, like just from the very beginning. But eventually I was able to do it. And then, you know, once you kind of get the swing of things, you know, kind of figure things out. But then you got to worry about the next part where I believe it's one of the rooms has like direct sunlight or something like that. And that's like a whole other factor. You know, you get like blinded a bit. So you're like, not only are you dodging like heavily armed goons, you're dodging tripwires, blinding lights. And it's like, okay, this is it's a very difficult mission. But somehow I managed to complete it. And not only that, I'm proud to say that I S ranked this mission. One of the 5 missions I S ranked. So thank you. You can praise me now.
Fancy. Take a round of applause, everybody watching the pod right now. But
thank you. Thank you.
I'm right there with you, man. You know, you come out of that initial spawn point and you I don't know what the military term is, but like you're getting fired at from 2 different directions, regardless of which, you know, entry point you use, right? Mm-hmm. And I think of all the early levels, this is the one that, you know, really kind of, this was my trial through fire moment, right? The kind of difficulty spike from this to the other levels was like, oh shit, this is like for real now, you know? Even, you know, I hate to admit it, you said you got an S rank. Man, right before this podcast, I was replaying it and it took me like 3 or 4 tries just to get through it like regularly, right? So, you know, a very kind of difficult early map that has a lot of challenges and unique sort of circumstances that you have to get around. Now, something that I do just briefly want to talk about that you mentioned were the, you know, presence of traps here, right?
Yes.
I think this is one of the most notorious levels for, you know, you open the door to like go into the laundry room and you hear that dreaded kaping go off. Yeah.
It gives me nightmares, man.
And you know, your perfect run, you know, you said you tried the S rank. So that, I mean, that's even worse there.
Yes.
Because you know, you have to do a couple of runs to, you know, get through there non-lethally just to have a run ruined by a stupid, you know, little grenade in the corner. Like, I don't know what the tactical advantage of booby trap in a bathroom is, but it gets me every time. Every single time I play this map, I die to the bombs at least once. So, I mean, that's my experience. It's not been great. It's
you know, the worst part too is it's like after you cleared everything out and it's like, okay, I gotta, you know, find the evidence and just tie up the leftover civilians. That's when it gets you.
Exactly.
That's when you hit the tripwire because your guard is down. Yeah, your guard's down. You're like, okay, there's no more hostiles. I'm just gonna go clean things up. Ping. Yeah. Boom. And it's like, oh, God damn it.
You're getting bit by a dead bee, you know, so to speak, right? Where, you know, the real risk is gone, but you know, you get slapped in the face by this trap that they left behind. So, you know, that's that. Part of me hates it and part of me loves it because it's like, I think it's one of the first levels that really introduces to you that, oh, you really need to stay on your toes the entire time that you're playing this. There's not really any like downtime or too much comfort to be found in this game. Like, you really need to stay cautious. So with that being said, I think it's a good time for us to actually start to look around the map and see what lore we can find.
So as soon as we entered the lobby, you know, as you said, dodging traps and dodging the enemies who have full field of vision of us as soon as we enter, we can see tons of bullet holes and shell casings all over the place, just like showcasing that the Left Behind just pretty much tore up this place as soon as they got in. But as we work clockwise, because there's a bunch of rooms we're going to look at, but let's start at honestly the most important room we have, which is an Airbnb. So this is what's interesting is like I didn't really pick up on this until I really started diving into this map. But the main room where the shots were fired at Senator Fremont and where like the main presence of the Left Behind it was an Airbnb. And this brings us to our first I guess, mystery of this map. Right on the floor, there is a civilian. Now, he's not dead, but he's wounded. I think he was like shot somewhere in the stomach or something. We don't know who this guy is. And we have 3 theories regarding who he could potentially be. Now, theory 1 is he was the Airbnb manager, or I guess you call it, was it a manager? What do you call it?
Yeah, I would say manager. Yeah. Owner. Yeah. Either or.
Yeah, Mr. Airbnb. He was renting the room out to the Left Behind. Some, shenanigans were going on. He came by saying what's going on, and then they shot him. Right? That's option 1.
Right.
Option 2, he was currently residing in that Airbnb, and the Left Behind kicked in his door, shot him, and took over. Or option 3, he was in on it. He was renting the room for the Left Behind, and they were all planning this big operation, but then the guy got cold feet and, after realizing what they actually plan on doing, and then they shot him. We really don't know.
Part of me really wishes that that's not the case, that the poor Airbnb manager is in on it. I really wanted to, when I first played this, I kind of had the vision in my head of like this guy, like, he rented out the room already and he pokes his head in like, oh, I forgot to tell you guys I changed the Wi-Fi password, and like just gets absolutely, obliterated by the Left Behind here.
Yeah.
But, I think this is like, I hate to say it's like humor, but like the fact that like, put yourself in the shoes of this Airbnb manager, if you will, right? You rent out this room. Mm-hmm. You're so excited. You got a massive party. You're making a lot of money off of renting your room out, just to like look at your phone and be like, oh, these guys are trying to kill a presidential candidate from my balcony. What's going on here? Right? Like that's such it's worst case scenario.
Yeah.
For a landlord, I guess.
Yeah. And I can only imagine if it is, option 1, the, Mr. Airbnb coming by and seeing all this shit and shit there is so much stuff in this room. They spray painted the walls. They have, like posters, or not posters, like, picket signs and signage of everything everywhere. There's a big Uncle Sam with a pig head, and just various things talking about how the anti-vet bill is, horrible and why Fremont needs to go. The most interesting thing, though, however, is that on the TV, on like the far left, or I guess when you're inside to the back, you can find a news report where a Left Behind member was pretty much making his demands. Or I don't know if you can call them demands, right. Just stating what they believe. Fremont is hurting the vets. What he plans to do would potentially kill hundreds, if not thousands of vets. If you cut, medical funding for these guys, like that's only going to end in disaster. So, a part of their motivations are, it's, you feel for the guys.
Right.
Because it's like, they're radicalized because of this injustice to not only them, but to their friends who they literally, bled for the country they bled for. And you have this, this politician going like, yeah, fuck you. So yeah, you kind of feel for them.
I definitely see where you're coming from too, Shayne, because, playing this level, it took me a couple of times, but like, I remember the feeling I had when I first saw that like some of the veterans were wearing prosthetic limbs or legs, or, a lot of them were walking around and you could like hear voice lines of them saying that same sort of stuff, echoing that sentiment. Like, we fought for the country, yet here the country is not fighting for us. And I don't want to say necessarily like I'm sympathetic to them. I am to a certain extent. But, you don't go in and shoot the poor Airbnb guy. Right. That's where I draw the line. You don't kill
right. That's
the Airbnb manager, right? No, but I love when this game does this because, you know, you go in, you play it through the first time, you're not really paying attention. You're just like, oh, these are some crazy veterans that tried to kill this politician. But on your second, your third, your fourth playthroughs, you're starting to pick up on this and you're like, oh, wow, you know, these guys aren't just the, you know, black and white villains that initially took them to be, right? They're nuanced. They have a lot of, you know, human qualities and traits about them. And I think that's sort of beautiful from a game design perspective when you can make an enemy that's, you know, the player feels bad about having to shoot, you know?
Yeah, and I think this is, I would say, is probably the only faction in the game that really is this kind of gray threat. Because a lot of the other threats that we will talk about, you know, later in this series, they're pretty bad. A lot of these guys, they're pretty bad. Yeah. But the Left Behind as a concept and you know what they're doing, it's like, okay, I get it, but I don't get it. You know what I mean? It's like you understand why they did it. They obviously shouldn't have done it, but you can understand where they're coming from, which is, you can't really say that about a lot of these other guys in this game.
I definitely, it's you might see it like once or twice more in the game, but for the most part, you know, and I guess that's why it sort of takes you so off guard, because, you know, most of the people that we encounter in this game, you're like, oh, this is, you know, very evil, bad man that is doing this stuff. You know what I mean? And it's like, you come across these guys and it's like, oh, they're not evil. They're just misunderstood, right? Sort of deal. You have those sort of moral quandaries when you come into this level, as opposed to, you know, in our last one where it was just like a robbery gone wrong. I think it's cool that the game shifts in between those sort of deals to, like I said before, keep you on your toes, right?
Yeah, but I guess we should move on to the next room, because this whole floor is full of very interesting characters. For instance, the next room we step into is a very famous music producer's, I guess, studio / apartment. His name's Laurie Bauer. And actually, we kind of got a little bit of a nod to him in the last map. One of the posters in the gas station, I believe, is implied to be one of the people that this guy signed, because I think he has a similar poster in his room as is in the gas station. But it adds a little bit more, you know, overall world building. Some, you know, obviously this guy isn't, you know, very big to the overall story, but it, you know, it shows you that, you know, some random civilians are going to be caught in this whole kerfuffle. Yeah, no, I honestly never noticed that. The thing with the posters that you just mentioned, I never honestly knew that. Yeah. I did know that, like, when you go into Laurie Bauer's room for the first time, you see all of these, you know, golden records and, like you said, music posters of people that he's worked with and stuff. But there's also this like plaque I think you can find on the wall of a Francisco Laguna. And I know, Shayne, that you are a notorious Francisco Laguna sort of conspiracy theorist. So I'd love to hear your interpretation on this, or anything you have to offer on what this could potentially mean. Okay. So I guess I should start from the beginning. For those of you who don't know about this this elusive figure, so when I first started covering Ready or Not, there was tons of references to this Mr. Francisco Laguna. And I'm talking like every map seemed to have some kind of Francisco Laguna thing. And, you know, Isaac and I have joked about this a lot, you know, doing the whole, you know, Pepe Silvia thing. Like, oh, who the hell's Pepe Silvia? Well, Francisco Laguna is my Pepe Silvia, goddammit. Because, like, he was driving me crazy. Because I'm like, okay, how the hell does this guy connect to this map, to this map, to this map? And I was like, why the hell is his placard in Laurie Bauer's room of all places? And, okay, maybe it might be a leftover asset that they're going to change later, as they did with a bunch of other things. But also, Also, I have spoken to a few of the devs asking about like, oh, there's a lot of the stuff that was taken out for, was it taken out because of, it was just reused assets, or does it have a greater connection? Like, for instance, a part of me had been theorizing that there's some kind of alternate history regarding some conflict during the Vietnam War. Like maybe it resulted in a different, outcome. And I was never given a straight answer. So like, I don't know if Mr. Laguna is canon. In my heart, he's canon, but in the game, he pops up little places here and there, and he is driving me crazy every time I see the name Francisco Laguna. So who knows? Maybe Lori Bauer is technically Francisco Laguna. Maybe Francisco Laguna did some crazy thing and then changed his name to Lori Bauer, or maybe he's just a part of the world. Maybe Mr. Laguna is a friend to all, and Lori Bauer is holding on to his little thing or something else, or I don't know. Mr. Laguna, Francisco Laguna, gonna drive me crazy. Like, it's like every time I hear that name, like if someone I get comments on this, man, as you can tell, it drives me crazy because I want to know, is it connected to something? Is it its own thing? It's like, who the hell is this man? Okay, I'm done.
I was going to say, I'm beginning to feel like I've opened a can of worms that I can't quite close here now. Anyways, though, once we start to look around this apartment a little bit more, we can find some indicators that this Mr. Bauer might actually be sick. We can find some sort of get well soon cards and a couple of these, how would you say, fan mail that has arrived that he's been reading and looking through. And this sort of small detail suggests that Mr. Bauer might have a terminal illness of some sort, which is all the reason for us to be incredibly careful clearing this building. In addition to this, we can also find this magazine that's sitting next to Mr. Bauer's bed, which talks about a trash crisis, which is something that we'll see later in some of our levels. But other than this, there aren't really too many other details in Lori Bauer's apartment. So with that being said, let's continue to move on.
So the next room is perhaps one of the most interesting ones, aside from all the left behind shenanigans. We find a sailor's room, and my God, does this guy love sailing. Like, everything about his room is sailor themed. He's got starfish, he's got like a wheel, a captain's hat. There's a picture of him with Reagan, I believe. He must have been some kind of, I guess, like an admiral or something, I'd wager. He was in the Navy for, who knows how long, and apparently very well decorated if he met a president at that time. But it's very odd in terms of, tonal shifts. You go from like one room that's like full of like guns and posters and like, oh, the world's on fire. Then you go to like this other room that it's like a really nice music producer. And then you're just in this like room with nautical nonsense. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's like you're walking into a set on SpongeBob, man.
Exactly.
Like I was half expecting like the giant hooks on the wall and stuff in there.
Exactly. I'm sure there's an Easter egg somewhere, right?
Yeah, you find it.
But my favorite thing on this entire map is if you go into his bathroom, on the window, written in red lipstick, is a note that reads, "Don't be a stranger. Love is only an adjoining door away." And nearby is some candles and some wine. It appears as though that this captain might have, a secret tryst, if you will, some kind of forbidden love. And the more we dive into this, we go into the connecting room, and my God, we get some more juicy details with a note that says, "Oh, Captain, my dear Captain, when can I see you again? Darling, don't mind my husband. He is soft as they come." Which, yeah.
Ooh. Oh, yikes.
Yeah,
right. Yikes,
dude. So this is the first hint at like, oh my God, there is some, some cheating going on. The next door neighbor is sleeping with this captain, this old sea guy. Yes, we'll call him a sea guy.
Oh, no. Oh.
Anyway.
This is important information. It's going to come back later, everybody.
Trust me. ready or not, all focuses on this one sea guy. So
hinges on the sea guy.
The sea guy. As we go into this adjoining room, we can find another note that says, "Listen here, sailor boy, don't let me catch you around my wife again. Even if you glance at her, I'm going to make sure you regret it. You'll meet your Navy friends sooner than you think. Scum." So yeah, the husband knows, and he's not too happy, as you could imagine.
Yeah, I mean, like the whole situation, if you look at it here just from an outside perspective, is what would the term be? Icky, very icky, right? Like you walk in and you see all of this stuff and you're like, oh, it's like his wife or something. And then you find the note on the floor and you're like, oh no. And then you walk into the other room and you see the other note and you're like, oh no, right? And as we go into this apartment, the actual couple's apartment, the wife and the man who's being cheated on, we'll start to see more of this story sort of unfold. But what grabs our attention about this place first is the absolute just blast from the past decorations all over the apartment, right? Like when I walked in, it was immediate, just, slapped in the face with 1970s aesthetics all over the place. And it's very sort of out of place, but in that sense, it fits in perfectly because just like how you said, you've got this apartment that's all guns, and then you walk in, you've got this SpongeBob room, and then now you walk into this, and it's like you're in 1973, Right. So it really does sort of grab your attention. But something that we need to kind of be cautious of is that there's all of these massive sort of stained glass barricades, I guess. I don't really even know what you'd call them, dividers, but they're all over the room. And when I first played this and I walked in, I was like, oh, look at the pretty glass all over the place here. And then immediately, one of the Left Behind steps out from it and, shoots me in the face.
Right.
And I think that's something, you need to be careful not to sort of smell the roses in this room, because even though it might look pretty, it might look kind of cool, there's a lot of enemies in here and stuff can get bad.
Right.
Very quickly. But anyways, sort of building off of what we were talking about with this, extramarital affair storyline, we can find that the room is divided with duct tape. There's duct tape splitting the couch. There's duct tape splitting the rooms. There's duct tape splitting the bed. And with this, you can sort of get the vibe that this is obviously a couple in disarray.
Like serious disarray, because it appears as though the husband even smashed the TV, as I think the wife leaves a note saying like, oh, you're so strong. Oh, look at you. You break my things. But even in the room, there are some I guess they're like self-help books. I can't remember the exact title of one, but it's something like how to live with a deadbeat husband or something like that. And it's just like, damn, this wife got no chill. And
I think it's
happened.
Literally along the lines of, sorry to interrupt. I think the book is exactly titled, So Your Husband's a Loser, Diary of a Bored Wife, which is like the most brutal book title that you could possibly imagine. Like the husband, he's coming out of the bathroom to sit on the couch. He's been kicked out to the couch, by the way. He can't sleep in the bed. Imagine him walking out just to see that book that has very obviously been left there for him to see, right? She knows he's sleeping there. It's such just a petty, the same thing with all the tape covering, the face of the husband in the family photos. It's just, you feel like you're watching two children just, bicker at one another and try to one up each other's pettiness. And it's kind of a fun sort of break from what we've been seeing in this level so far. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, yeah. And it's talking about tonal shifts again. That's a whole other tonal shift. It's like each of these rooms, you're expecting the first room is so mysterious, and then you got a music producer, nautical. It's like, oh my god, now I'm in the middle of a divorce. What the fuck is going on? It's like tonal shift after tonal shift after tonal shift, and I love it. And this is so weird because I think there's even talking about those glass what do you call them? Barricades, as you said.
Yeah.
There's even a note talking about like she spent like a shitload of money on them. And he's like, why? Why would you do this? There's like a note talking about that. And it's really funny, and it really lightens the mood. But in the complete opposite, end of the that spectrum, there's a body in the room too, which is worth noting. So on the floor, there is, I believe it's implied that he is with the hotel staff, and he came up there to help get either her things or his things, I forgot who, somebody's things out of the room. Somebody's moving out, and he was just, I guess, a bellhop coming up to help, and that just happened to coincide with the Left Behind coming in. Now, the other important thing about this room is there's another gun. So the whole assassination attempt started in the Airbnb. That was facing directly towards the where the speech was held. I guess it was like a little park or something. Now, the question you'd have is like, okay, then why is there a second gun pointed the complete opposite direction? Like, it doesn't really make sense. Now, that brings us to, a little bit more serious topics here, because that is odd, and if you go back to the Airbnb room, there's even a map of everything. This is implying that they may have had, deeper intel.
Right.
In fact, this is further clarified upon in the evidence section. Now we can find a laser rangefinder, which, it's not super important to the lore, but the Left Behind's plan of attack, it's filled with diagrams, locations, times of events, but it's specifically noted that this is way too detailed for just a bunch of, radicals to get their hands on. This is very evidently spelled out, all of Fremont's plans, including where his motorcade would go in the event of him being evacuated, which happens to be the exact view from this squabbling couple's apartment.
Right.
And that really hints at like, oh my God, maybe there is something deeper.
And this might be like one of the first sort of instances where we see that, because, when you're playing the level, just like how you said, you sort of, you pick it up, but you're not entirely sure. Like, it's in the back of your head. You see this map that's marked up in the big gun room, and you see this other gun facing the opposite direction. And that, if you're really looking into it just at the surface level, it might indicate that they anticipated his security team's sort of escape plan. But once you get into, like you said, the evidence locker, it's proven without a shadow of a doubt that this was sort of an inside job, right? Someone behind the scenes was giving the Left Behind all of this information. And you have to wonder why. Who are these people that want Senator Fremont dead? Are these fellow veterans that just happen to be close to him, or is it something entirely different? And
the only really, I guess, people we could point a finger at or even theorize about is included in the last bit of evidence, where we have a thing called Johnson's personal effects. Now, we don't really know who Johnson is, but I believe it's implied that he might be one of the Left Behind or something like that. But regardless, he has a photo in the box of 5 men standing in front of a building marked USIA. Now, we have not talked about the USIA yet, but we will talk about them a lot in this series. Long story short, they are basically analogous to the CIA. They are a government organization that may have their hands in some things and maybe doing some things that are not quite above board. And this might be implying that they may be involved in some way, shape, or form, or their actions in the past inspired somebody to, rat them out and give the Left Behind this information or something along those lines.
Right. And, as we'll come to see like later in this game, there are a lot of like sort of instances where this surface level event happens, this assassination happens, right? And, it has sort of this, surface story where it's just like, oh, it's a bunch of angry veterans. But if you kind of peel back a layer and peel back another layer, it sort of gets painted in a whole different context. And, now that we see that this information has found its way into the hands of the Left Behind, we can't help but wonder, is this, USIA involved? at all. Why else would this, member of the Left Behind have this box and have this photo of these men in the USIA? There's really no reason to it, right? So it is something worth considering as we kind of begin to go through this series to try to look at things beyond the surface level, right? Try to peel back a layer or two and see how it connects to some of the different people in this game. And before long, if you do that, you'll wind up just as crazy as Shayne and I. So
yes,
I invite you to do
understatement.
that.
My God, that is an understatement. So I guess if everyone wants to keep along or keep track of everything, put on your little evidence board, put USIA at the middle. They're at the very middle,
right.
And all the red strings will come from there.
But completely ignore Francisco Laguna.
Well,
he's not on the board at all. Don't listen to Shayne.
Let's not get too hasty here.
Don't.
He's at the center of this all.
They are the core, I would say, of a massive storyline in the base game, and you even see that start to get built upon in the DLCs that have been coming out. And even now, I mean, Shayne, you and I have been covering this game for forever, it seems like, and it's like even I don't know where the USIA is going to go or what's going to happen next. So this is definitely, the seed. Plant the seed. And let it go from there, I guess.
Yeah. So, like we said, though, so we don't know exactly how, what, or why this unknown party gave the Left Behind this information. We know they obviously didn't like Senator Fremont. We don't know if that's because they were also against the vet funding bill or the anti-vet funding bill. And maybe this organization wanted to take him out in favor of the vets, or they wanted to take him out for another reason. Now, this mission is called Ides of March, which I believe is when Caesar was assassinated in ancient Rome. So perhaps that is connected in some way, shape, or form. Maybe it's theorized. Maybe we could theorize about this for days, right, about the connections. But we know he lived. We know he's in critical condition, so he lived. So it's not necessarily a quick, exact one for one of the whole Caesar thing, but who knows?
And I really do like the detail of just the title here, right? Because, like you said, I think when the developers made this, that it was literally just like, oh, it's a politician, being assassinated or whatever. Let's name it after the famous other time that this happened, right?
Right.
And they likely knew that there would be tons of people out there that would just be like, Ides of March. Okay, it happened on the 18th. And if you look at it this way and
right,
and just people trying to connect the dots to something that might just be, for all I know, that might just be a reference that they're throwing out there. But the moral of the sort of story here is that the Left Behind are a highly motivated group with eyes that are very, very close to the senator. Like they have somebody very close to Senator Fremont that is feeding them this information. And, from what we heard in our briefing, the senator's sort of just holding on by a thread, is he not, Shayne?
Yeah. Yeah, he's in critical condition, and at the end of the mission, I mean, they said he's okay, but we really don't know. And that really leaves us up in the air of, if this, are they done? Are they going to continue their attack? We don't know. And, biggest question too is, are there more? Was this the only branch of the Left Behind, or will they strike again? We just don't know.
But I imagine with all of that we've just about wrapped up Ides of March. For any of you guys who are interested, you can find me on YouTube under Issac Morgan. I'll have that linked down below. And if you want to look at all the stupid stuff that I post on Instagram, my handle there is @theIssac
And if you want to look at all the stupid stuff I post on YouTube, you can find my channels at Shayne Please Shut Up and Shayne No One Cares, as well as Shayne the Doyle on Instagram. But with all that being said, as always, do not sleep with your next door seaman. Thank you, and we will see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.